Hello, my name is Braden Carnes, and today I will be giving a presentation on the topic of SQL injection. SQL injection is the second most popular web application attack. If a SQL injection attack is successful against your server or your web application and your database is compromised, you are in for a world of hurt. When a SQL injection attack is executed correctly, the attacker has the ability to read all the data, possibly modify the data, and possibly delete your data. It is a catastrophe. I will demonstrate a SQL injection attack using a vulnerable server I have acquired from Seed Labs. I will run it in a Docker container, so start Docker. And I will start the server. And then we can access our vulnerable server through our web browser or through the command line, but I'm going to display the web browser. Okay, here's our vulnerable server. Now, how an SQL injection attack works is that an SQL injection attack is possible when the author of the code or the author of the web application does not take into account invalid or improper responses to their queries. So they're accepting input here, a username and password. Now, if they have not configured their code right and their SQL right, I can actually append SQL commands to the end of their queries and modify the actual SQL that is being executed. So in order to do this, we'll first test and see if this server is vulnerable. The web application is vulnerable. To test and see if to do this, all you have to do is put in a single quote, which will end the query right there, or throw a extra single quote without a pair, which will cause an error. And if you get an SQL error, you know the server is vulnerable. If it says invalid response, it could be vulnerable. Try a few more things, but it's probably not. You throw a single quote in and see what happens. Okay, there's an error running the query. You have an error in your SQL syntax. This is a good sign. This means the database is ours to play with because it's running directly to the SQL query. It's not being caught. The error is not being caught. The invalid response is not being caught. So, in this case, we can actually append SQL commands to the end of our inputs. The first one I'm going to do is just a basic username. I'll start with admin, and then I'm going to attempt to comment out the rest of the query, the SQL query that's being passed. By doing that, I'll use the single quote to end the input acceptance and add a hashtag, because this is the comment character in SQL. Let's see what we get. In theory, this should actually comment out the entire password acceptance portion of the SQL query, and we should be left with all the admins in the system and their details. Okay, it works. As you can see, we have a list of users. We get their information, their usernames, their information. We even can see their social security number. This is a scary fact. So we know the server is vulnerable. What else can we do with it? If we log in using one of these users, let's use Alice, her password. Okay, we can see Alice's profile. Now, if we can find a place where Alice is able to put input into the system, we might be able to have another SQL injection attack on our hands and alter Alice's information. So let's try edit profile. Okay, yes, we have inputs. We're allowed to input here, so this means if the server is vulnerable on the login page to a SQL injection, it is most likely vulnerable within a user's profile. So if we want to change Alice's salary, we have to end the input acceptance. We will add a comment for the select statement, which will allow us to add another, or grab another value. And then we can change her salary to whatever you please. As you can see, I've already done this and it's popping out. Let's say she wants a salary of $80,000. Okay, our SQL is added, appended to the end of our input. Our input is actually nothing. We ended it right away. Let's see what happens. Okay, see, Alice's salary has now been changed to $80,000. This site is vulnerable to SQL injection on many levels. There's probably much more we could do with this, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to keep further demonstrating. This SQL demonstration is obviously done on a very vulnerable server that is catered to a SQL injection attack. But this does not mean this vulnerability does not exist in the wild. Using just Google Dorks, I have found many websites that actually have SQL injection vulnerabilities running out on the public, not on their local machine like I am right here. SQL injection attacks, SQL injection attacks are easy to execute. All you have to do is append basic SQL statements to the end of inputs. And if the server or the web application is vulnerable, you can wreak some havoc. Proper precautions must be taken to fix this. This is written in PHP, I think, so they should have had tried catches, or they should have catches to catch improper and invalid inputs, but as you can see, they do not. If these precautions are not taken, the entire database contents can be open to the public. This can bring legal, economical, and severe reputational repercussions to the company or organization that is running this vulnerable web application. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it.